We'll call to order this meeting for Monday, November 21st. Jordan, would you give us a roll call, please?
Please respond by stating present. Councilmember Ronayne.
Present.
Foberg.
Present.
Liebelt.
Present.
Reif.
Present.
Johnson.
Present.
Reinbold.
Present.
Langer.
Present.
Norvstrup.
Present.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Present. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. First order of business will be to approve this week's agenda. In talking to the council ahead of this discussion, we've agreed to eliminate item C out of the new business, so I would take a motion to approve this agenda with C from new business eliminated.
Move to approve the agenda with the deletion of item C, new business.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson, second from Councilman Reinbold. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry. Next, we've got the approval of the minutes, which was our meeting last held on November 7th of 2022. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So approved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Liebelt and a second from Councilman Reif. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry. We have one speaker who signed up for the open forum, but since it's a particular item on the agenda, I will pass that along to the Lieutenant Mayor, who will be conducting that issue. In the meantime, we'll take a vote on our consent calendar, where we've got 4 items of new city business, including plats, hearing dates, a license for a taxi cab driver, who may or may not be related to me, and a lottery notice. Can I get a motion for those 4 items of city business?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Foberg and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Any questions or statements from the council on this? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry. First item of old business will be the possible second reading and final adoption of an ordinance titled 22-1004, which rezones properties at Prairie's Edge 14th Edition at 2618 Waterview Drive and 3102 24th Avenue Northeast from the distinctions R2, A1, and A2, all to R2 and A2. Brett, we took a vote on it last time. Anything new?
No changes since last time.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson, second from Councilwoman Liebelt. Anything from the council before we take our votes? Jordan?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Foberg.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Abstain.
Langer.
Aye.
Norvstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Schoeneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Our next item is a action on economic development services. I'll pass it over to Alan. Alan?
Thank you, Mayor Schoeneman. So item B on our agenda is possible action on proposed 2023 economic development services. This topic has been discussed previously in our October 24th and November 7th council meetings. At both those meetings, the council tabled discussion to allow for additional collaboration, and in this recent timeline, we've received 3 documents for consideration. I'll just highlight those quickly. First was a proposal for economic development services received from Aberdeen Development Corp. On November 2nd. A counter-proposal was developed by council members and brought forward last Monday, November 14th. And on Friday, the Aberdeen Development Corp. Board responded to the council's counter-proposal with certain amendments which are found in front of you in this week's packet. So with that brief history, we'll ask City Manager Joe Gaw to share any additional details we might need to consider this evening.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson. No, I think we've talked about this. I think everybody understands the different sides of this. Staff's ready to move forward with whatever is approved by the council tonight.
Thank you, Joe. So before entertaining a motion, let me clarify that there are 2 options here for our support. Option number 2 refers to the council's counter-proposal, of November 14. It does not refer to the document shared by the ADC in response. In a moment, I will ask for a motion. There will then be council discussion. We recognize, as per the registration for open forum and with the attendance in the room, we acknowledge that there's high interest in this agenda item, and there are individuals who will want to be heard, and we will devote time for public comments. And when we do, we'll ask for each organization who wishes to be heard to appoint one spokesperson who can speak on behalf to address the council. Depending on discussion, it is possible that there may be a unique new motion proposed, which also may lead to a vote. So, with that in mind, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adopt motion number 1.
Is there a second? Okay, not hearing.
Can you
I'll-
clarify what 1 is?
Yes, again, number 1 refers to the city manager's proposed plan, which would authorize moving forward with filling an economic development manager position, as stated in 6B. That is item number 1. Number 2 would be to adopt the counterproposal, which was provided on the 14th of November by the city council.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Please.
On how was the counter proposal, I guess, submitted on behalf of the city council when the city council didn't vote on the counter proposal?
So that occurred on the 14th, on an off day when the council did not meet. And so looking at the calendar, since our last meet, that was brought forward through a subgroup of the council. There was opportunities for input from all council to channel or to frame that. It was brought forward as a public document on the Friday of last week then. We had the, if you want to call it a counter proposal, provided by the ADC board, which was brought forward after these minutes were prepared and were published. So again, there is opportunity for other motions to be made. But to clarify, number 1 is the city manager's original plan for the hiring of a manager position overseen by the city. The second option on the agenda is to adopt the counterproposal brought forward by this group, the council, last Monday. And those are the 2 things that are currently up for support.
So a person could make a different motion.
Yes, as mentioned earlier, that is a possibility.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I move that we accept the ADC counter proposal from 1118.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilwoman Folberg and a second by Councilman Nostrup to adopt the ADC document, which was brought forward last Friday. Discussion among the council.
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Councilman Nostrup.
So I think the Development Corp has done a good job in Aberdeen, and like my quote in the paper this weekend, or this last week, I think there's always room for improvement, especially in the area of communication, and I think this dialogue will make the city better and make ADC better, and having a little give and take about the proposals and counter proposals I think is good, and I think the November 18th response to our proposal is the way to go. And as a business owner, this is a pretty close issue to me, where economic development, and not saying that's not important to other people, I think it's important to everyone, but I've seen what ADC can do up close and personal, and I think they did a good job, and I think they've done a good job for 60 years or so, or whatever the history is, and this will make that relationship a little better. So I would like to continue that relationship and support that November 18th counter proposal.
Thank you. Other discussion?
Mr. Deputy Mayor,
Councilwoman.
I just, as a new member of City Council, I think I'm guided by the mantra that we need to do what's right by the city. And for 70 years, the ADC and the city have had a positive working relationship. I'm certain there have been times where people didn't see eye to eye, but the communication stayed open and people continued to work together. And in that spirit of the many people who have worked to build this great city over 70 years, in this relationship, I think we need to keep moving forward with this relationship. And the Aberdeen Development Corporation has an ability to be nimble in the way that a city government does not have an ability to be nimble. I work for a state government organization, and there's not a lot of nimbleness in government. And that's really by design, so that decisions are made slowly and deliberately. But what happens in economic development is sometimes decisions need to be made quickly, and also people need to be able to have information that's not necessarily broadly shared until it's time to share that information. So I've advocated to the city manager strongly that we need to keep our relationship with the Aberdeen Development Corporation, and that we need to have monthly presentations by the Aberdeen Development Corporation to the City Council in executive session, because what my understanding is from talking to counselors outside of this room is that people want to know what's going on in the city, and city councilors don't want to be the last ones to know what's going on in the city. And the only way for that to happen is for the ADC to share information with us that's not necessarily ready for prime time, not necessarily ready for the newspaper, and it's competitive information where Aberdeen's competing with other cities potentially for development. And the only way to share that information would be in executive session. And so while I respect the open meeting laws of the state and think they're very valuable, I also think that part of the reason that we're where we are right now is because we are not necessarily getting all the information that we want. And for that to happen, it probably needs to happen with regular executive session meetings, whether they're monthly or quarterly. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else wishes to be heard among the council on this item? Okay, we'll invite forward Julie Johnson.
Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council, my name is Julie Johnson. I'm a lawyer here and have done a lot of economic development work in the area as well as legislatively. My only reason for asking to sign up tonight was to mention to you that when we worked with Absolutely Aberdeen, with which the city of Aberdeen was a partner and investor, we did considerable retail recruitment during that time. The city had a definite role. Our organization had a definite role. We did it over the course of about 3 years. So if you're serious about retail, just have someone ring me up and we can talk seriously about how much work it took and exactly who does what at a time like that. I'm happy to share that because it was an exciting time for the community and it did have some payoff. So with that, I'll sit down and get out of the way of this particular motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Or there other organizations who are present, we invite you to come forward and to speak to this. If you'll just introduce who you are and who you represent, please.
My name is Charlie.
Green light is on.
Now it is. Okay,
Perfect.
I didn't hit it hard enough.
Thank you.
My name is Shar Hager, and I am the chairwoman of the ADC. I do want to thank Erin for speaking out. A lot of what she said is exactly how we feel. It has been a great collaboration for the last 67 years, and we would genuinely love to continue that. We do realize that there's work to be done to accommodate what you're asking, and we're, you know, as we've laid out in our proposal that you received the other day, that we're willing to do what's listed there, which we think is going to bring that together into the areas that you want to see more, and thanks to David as well. But we truly would like the opportunity to continue this collaboration. We think it's been great for Aberdeen, and we really have the goal of bringing economic development along into the future, and that's what we do, and that's what we'd like to continue to do. But we'd like to work with you to get that done and give you the reports and whatnot that you need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the gallery who would like to be heard? Okay. I'd like to bring forward just a thought or two. You know, we find ourselves in a situation where there has been retail erosion, and we can all list the companies who have left for various reasons. It's not always that business was poor, it's corporate decisions affect. We've had some big box stores, the Kmart's, the Shopko's, the Office Max's, the Sears. We've had smaller entities that have left, and so we find ourselves with some vacancies, and citizens expect to have a full range of shopping options. I wish that there were more options than what we have right now. We've seen this attrition, which is a sad thing, and so we need to replenish that retail bucket. And looking at the ways that we have the channels, I'm intrigued by the possibilities and the opportunities with having a city employee under city supervision who would add horsepower to the city's economic engine in parallel with the ADC. I see this as a parallel effort, adding to existing capabilities, working in unison. I think we have an opportunity for a trifecta, really, where there could be the ADC, the city efforts, and the Innovation Center based at Northern. Great opportunities. I feel that this is an interesting time, maybe an ideal time, to consider this and give it a whirl for a year and see how that goes. So I'd like to put that thought forward for consideration by the council.
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, please.
Can I ask a point of clarification to your point that you just made? I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but the job description, correct me if I'm wrong, but the job description that we have before us in point 1 to adopt the city manager's proposed plan isn't really about retail development. It's basically the work that the ADC already does as a whole.
It would be that and more. It would be involving RFPs, retail development across helping downtown, strip mall, uptown mall. It would be citywide. So I'm not sure that I agree that it would be as you described.
Okay. Can I just add one more thing?
Please.
From my experience? Growing up in retail, it is not an easy thing. My parents owned shoe stores when I was growing up, and it's not easy. It's really hard work. It takes up all of your life. And I grew up in Brookings, and this was long before the internet, and people would go to Sioux Falls to buy shoes, and that made it harder for us to eat dinner. And what I love about Aberdeen, and actually when we moved here in 95, when we first got married, we were here 95 to 97, and then 2006 till now. I love the fact that we're 150 miles from Fargo and from Sioux Falls, because it means that we have to build our own retail. And we are completely lucky to have Ken's and Kessler's and Production Monkeys and McQuillan Design and all these locally owned businesses that invest in our town. And if you bring in Walgreens instead of a Jones Drug, they're not sponsoring your softball team. And they're not giving to the Boys and Girls Club when they build a new Boys and Girls Club. and they don't necessarily have the same investment in the employees. And if we want retail, we're going to need employees, and we have a shortage of employees. So how do you get new employees? You have to get new businesses. To get new businesses, and you get trailing spouses and families, and those folks are going to work in your retail. People aren't going to move to Aberdeen to work in retail. I think the cart is going before the horse, and you have to have the economic development in technology and manufacturing and agriculture and hospitals and healthcare, and then the retail follows that. We need more people here. We need water. We haven't talked about that yet. You know, the city is spread pretty thin. I have a question about how many employees do we have in city government per person in Aberdeen 10 years ago? And how many city employees do we have in Aberdeen per person, or city employees do we have per person in Aberdeen today? Because I would imagine that, again, if it's anything like state government, the population's grown, but the number of employees hasn't necessarily, and people are just spread thin within City Hall, I imagine. And to add another task for City Hall to do when the city should be working on things like getting water so we can do new kinds of economic development, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think when we talk about retail, we need to realize, like, Hy-Vee is not where it's at. We are so lucky to have Ken's and Kessler's. And if you talk to my sister who lives in Brookings, the first thing she'd tell you is, you're so lucky to have Ken's and Kessler's. So you have to be careful for what you wish for. And I would rather have Roma's than have Olive Garden any day of the week, because those folks care about us and they invest in our community. And they're making money for families, and they're changing families' lives by opening their own local retail establishments instead of just being a franchise. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Deputy Mayor,
Yeah,
if I may,
Councilwoman Lehner.
I work really, really hard in the retail sector, really, really hard in it, and I love business in South Dakota. I love that I, throughout COVID, was able to keep my business alive and pay for a business in Kansas that was closed because of how great this community is. And I always say how thankful I am that I came to Aberdeen and that Scott is the coach of something that's so special in a town like this. But to say that because of all those problems we have, that we can't actively recruit other businesses to Aberdeen that aren't chains is just blatantly absurd to me, because with my job with the South Dakota retailers, I watch us do it all the time in different communities and see what they do. And I genuinely believe that we can be excited about that concept. And you're absolutely right that we have major issues. We have no housing, we have no daycare, we have no jobs we have no people for the tons of jobs that we have. As a state, our unemployment level is under 3% and our unemployable is over 3%. All of those issues are a problem no matter what. We don't have the water for another AGP. You know, we don't have any of those things. In fact, I just told my husband the other day that if he was offered the Aberdeen Wings job and we didn't have a home here, I don't know how we'd make it work. With twins, how would we find daycare? We could have all the jobs in the world, but when we don't have things that we need in Aberdeen, we can't get people to come here. So we have a major issue in general. I don't look at this. I actually totaled my time I've spent on this. I've spent over 75 hours of my personal time going through files, taking phone calls, going to meetings, having conversations, because I understand how important this is. I've talked to former council members. I've looked through books of studies that have been done on Main Street and seen all the different buildings and how they've been rehabbed. So to please know that any decisions that are made, it's not like I just woke up today and thought, I want to do this. I care very much about the history of this town, even though I'm not from here. I care more than probably I could ever explain. I know my decisions have to be for what's best for the city, and that's why this decision is always hard, because I can't do what's easiest for me. I have to look at the big picture here. I don't look at any of this like a sever of partnerships. I look at this as, how do we rebuild? How do we change? How do we develop? We have new people on this council. We have a new city manager. We have a new mayor than when all these things were formed. The city has to grow. Things have to change. Transparency always has to prevail in regards to city government, and we have to figure it out. So my vote tonight and how I feel about this has nothing to do with severing a tie, ending a relationship, or doing any of those things. It has to do with holding organizations and the city accountable, as well as moving forward and redeveloping and figuring out while we have the time, because you're right, we have no room to do anything actually as a city. We're at kind of a standstill. All we can do is try our best to try to recruit businesses here and show them why we're so great in Aberdeen.
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Council.
This economic development is bigger than retail. Retail is a component of economic development, and it plays its role, but all aspects of economic development are important. And we've said retail more than I can even count right now, which is a little concerning because it shouldn't be our sole focus. And the other thing that concerns me with this discussion is we just made, or we're in the process of making a postcard that Brookings and Watertown and Mitchell and Sioux Falls and Yankton and Rapid City can send out and say, why not to come to Aberdeen? And that scares me a lot because we need to be thoughtful on how we position this conversation. And Aberdeen has a lot going on. And to say that we don't have challenges isn't fair, but to focus on all the reasons why somebody shouldn't move a business here or grow a business here or move here concerns me. So as we have this discussion, I sure hope we don't make the postcard for those communities I listed or Minnesota or North Dakota or whatever, because right now we're going down the path of telling people why they should move out of Aberdeen and why they shouldn't locate here. And I think there's way more positive going on in Aberdeen than what we just listed on the negative side. Right. So I think we just need to be really careful when we're talking, because I don't want this to cost us people and jobs and opportunities because of this discussion. And we're going in a dangerous direction, I think. And I still think this is a better way to maintain this relationship, make a few changes, and move on.
Yeah, please consider the context in which some of the earlier comments were made. This is an intent to have unison and working in parallel on economic development, retail being one portion of that, which is readily apparent. But in all the RFPs, in all of the whole scope of what we do, there is a lot going on in Aberdeen with planning for water, planning for economic development, the RFPs, revolving loan, working with the state. Those are all positive and will continue. This is an opportunity just to have a laser focus on having the city join in with the ADC.
Yeah, but if I can, as a business owner, if I'm wanting to start a business and I have to call a city employee that is basically working by themselves and is new and trying to build those relationships, I mean, we have no idea who this person might be, and they might not have any relationships with the people that really matter because they're new to Aberdeen, or they have to build those relationships because they don't have them, versus ADC that does have them. And I prefer to call a group like ADC before I would call some city employee. And I think other small business owners would agree with that, or even bigger businesses. Obviously, the Governor's Office of Economic Development is a state agency, but I think we'd rather call somebody like ADC first and work with them, and ADC can work with us to make adjustments as we need to on ordinances or whatever we need to do to get that business to be able to locate here if there is a hurdle.
Thank you.
What's the other question I know, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I have a
other
question
comments?
about the city, what's called the counter proposal from 1114 that came from the city manager and a subset of the city council. There's one point on there that says that the city manager will be a ex officio member, the city manager and a city council liaison designated by the mayor, shall serve as an ex officio member of the Aberdeen Development Corporation Board of Directors. My understanding, based on reading the Aberdeen Development Corporation, it's not a statute, but it's their organizing documents, is that the city manager and the mayor, or at least the city manager, is already an ex officio member of the Aberdeen Development Corporation. So I was just wondering if we could hear from the city manager about what he's learned from being part of the Aberdeen Development Corporation and attending those meetings as an ex officio member.
Yeah, you're right. And I am listed as an ex officio member, and my attendance has not been stellar lately. But the one thing I've learned is everything you've just said, and I think Councilman Johnson, is that economic development has become a monster, a very big monster. And as good as we're doing, we're not keeping up with it. And I think that's what all of this is can we do more? Can we do better? Can we involve more people at different levels? And I think the question's yes. I mean, I think very clearly we don't quite understand exactly what this person would do in reference to what the Development Corporation would do, but I think we'll find out pretty quickly that we can all have really good nuances. It's kind of become an us versus them. That's not really what this was about. But I do think the model that I was hoping we would get to, and I think we will get to, is that the city does some things, the Development Corp does some other things, and together they're a pretty unbeatable superpower. That's kind of the idea to get to.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, please.
If we're not, if for instance, that the council decides to not fund the Aberdeen Development Corporation, then why would the Aberdeen Development Corporation work with the city? I mean, I shouldn't say, it's just more of a rhetorical kinds of question. Like, in my mind, if we want to invest in retail development, then I would have written the job description for this person that's working for the city quite differently to focus on retail development. And I would have doubled the investment in economic development, still giving the $130,000 to the ADC, and then adding another $100,000 to this retail person that works for the city. If that's ultimately the goal, to work parallel, then taking the funding from the ADC and doing something totally different without having a seat necessarily at the table anymore, doesn't help me understand. I can't envision how that helps you develop both tracks in parallel to each other if all of the investment's going to a different track.
Thank you.
I've lost track where we're at with motions.
So we have just one motion that's on the table, and that is to adopt neither option 1 or 2, but to adopt a new option, unique one, where we would adopt the response counter proposal received on the 18th, last Friday. So it would be the document from the 14th, which the council brought forward, but with the italicized edits and additions there as found in the ADC board's document of November 18. That is what has currently been moved and seconded.
That's off the table, though.
Yeah, that died for lack of a second. So on the table is currently the motion made by Councilwoman Faubourg and seconded by Councilman Nostrup. Any other questions? Okay, it seems like discussion has come to an end. Let's vote. And thanks everyone for your input. Very much appreciated. Jordan, will you please give a roll call on this motion?
Sure. Councilmember Norpstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
No.
Reinbold,
No.
Reif,
No.
Liebelt,
No.
Faubourg,
Aye.
Ronayne. Councilmember Ronayne,
Sorry. No.
Deputy Mayor Johnson.
No. All right. Is there any other motions members of the council would like to make at this time?
Is Councilman Reinbold's motion still on the table? Awaiting a second?
Let's start with a fresh motion.
I'll make motion on option number 1 for discussion.
Second. We have a motion from Councilman Reif and a second from Councilman Reinbold to adopt option number 1. Further discussion. Jordan, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, I just can't sit here and not say anything. I think if we go down this path, and I think Councilwoman Foberg just made a really good point. If we want to make economic development a big deal in Aberdeen, taking funding from ADC and putting it in a city employee that is going to have to build those relationships and those networks and have the same amount of money spent doesn't make any sense. If anything, we should, if we really believe in what we're saying, then we should have a city employee that works with ADC. ADC has the money that they have now, and you increase the budget for economic development in Aberdeen, so you can move forward and probably be more successful than if we go down this path of number 1. I've only been on the city council since July 1st, but I think this will be the biggest mistake that we're going to make in my 5 years if we go down this path. And I know I'm in the minority because we just voted, but I think this is going to be a huge mistake, and Aberdeen's going to lose, and we all lose because of that. But you guys can do what you want to do. So,
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Councilwoman. Yeah.
Ron, can you help? Would it be a friendly amendment to the motion to add $100,000 to the ADC?
Yeah, that could be a friendly motion.
I am making that friendly amendment to take number 1, but add $100,000 allocation to the ADC to continue their work.
Okay, so may I ask our city attorney, procedurally, we have a motion previously which has just had an amendment made to it. Should the vote be as was originally, or should it be with the amendment?
You should take a vote on the amendment to see whether you have a majority to approve the amendment to the motion.
Okay. Perhaps there should be some discussion before we take that vote with input from the author of the city budget, Mr. Joe Gah.
You know, I think, you know, my job is to solve problems, and I think to take things you hear in 8 million directions and bring them into a small thing. I was actually sitting here thinking what we've been talking about, and I've said this from the very beginning, and I'll say it here. The plan wasn't necessarily to cut the ADC out. The plan was to do this on the same budget. When a proposal with Northern and ADC, which I think has great merit, came up, I made the choice to present a budget that was still balanced with last year, trying to follow the essence of let's try some things differently and see what works out. But ultimately, I think we will, when we talk about having a partnership, you know, Councilwoman Foberg's hypothetical question is, why would they work with us if we don't pay them? I think we need to decide what they do and what we do and how that works together. Kind of again back to that superpower. Throwing money at something and saying figure it out may not be the best thing, but I think we're at a real good crossroads here, which was kind of what I wanted to do in the first place. You know, there's 50,000 extra, not 100,000, but we can figure out where it comes from if that's what you want to do. But what I was sitting here thinking is, you know what, we do need to figure out how that role keeps going. I think there's changes that can happen that lead to positive outcomes.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And so what result are we not getting now that we think we're gonna get by doing number one? Because there's a lot of businesses in the last 60, 70 years that are here because of the Development Corp. So, yeah, how are we gonna do it better than somebody that's been doing it for that long?
I think your statement, your question is based on the premise that ADC will cease what they're doing. We expect that they'll continue doing what they're doing, and this would just be an additional lane that offers additional horsepower, additional effort that's parallel. It's not to say that things will cease or be curtailed. That's not the intent. It's to work in unison.
Can we ask somebody from the ADC?
My question is for you guys, and because if you want to go in another direction, what result do you want that you're not getting now? Because the status quo, if we keep going and make some adjustments as we have laid out on November 18th with that counter proposal, that's like fixing some of the issues that have been somewhat brought up and mentioned. So that question is to the people that voted no on the first motion, because if you think it's broken, and do you think this is gonna fix it? Because I don't. I don't think severing the relationship, and that they're good people and they want to have Aberdeen grow, and they're not gonna cease to exist, but like we just kind of poked them in the eye. So like it doesn't make a healthy relationship by poking somebody in the eye and then being like, hey, can you work with us? You know, but I mean, hopefully they can get past that, but like it's not exactly ideal when you do that.
Okay, we've had a wide range of comments, and they're all appreciated.
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
I heard
please.
Councilman Reinbold mention a minute ago that he'd like to hear from the ADC, and I was, I mean, we've got a lot of really experienced people who have invested a lot of their lives in Aberdeen in the room, and I don't know how we would open the floor to hearing more comments, but I sure would like to hear from some people who have wisdom beyond what I have about economic development in this town.
You know, I'll entertain that idea as presiding officer. And Mike, would you like to make any comments?
Sorry. So I'd be happy to make any comments, but what would you like me to comment to? Is there a specific question that somebody has, or?
I don't know that that's the case.
I'll start.
Okay.
If we do not approve any funding for the ADC, will the ADC cease to exist?
No, the ADC
Okay.
wouldn't cease to exist. And again, keep in mind, if I'm making comments tonight, I just work there. The board ultimately ends up and decides what the final determination is, but it was made very clear to me, since we've had to engage in these discussions, that we certainly wouldn't cease to exist. We'd have to take a long look at the actual mission and figure out exactly what that is.
Okay.
Without funding from the city at the current level, which of course is at 180, there would be a number of things that would, you know, have to be looked at. The main one probably being land development.
Okay.
It's
Councilman
not,
Rife.
it's not really a question. I'm not opposed to option one, and then still providing some level of funding for the ADC. Because I think option one does have merit. But at the same time, I understand the need for ADC to have additional funding to do what they want. I don't know that 100,000 is the number. I would leave it open to say, as money is needed, I would expect you to come in front of the council and request it versus just a monthly check. That would be my 2 cents.
I would agree with that. I think that's a pretty good idea. I don't know that $100,000 is quite the right amount. I'd like to see it a little less. Would you guys be willing to work with somebody from the city if the city hired an economic development manager?
That's an impossible question for us to answer, because here's been the challenge with everything is the biggest challenge the board has faced is two people on the council came and talked to us about any of this. Nobody else has said anything. We were not informed that there were any questions or any issues. I found out about it through a unintentional conversation with the city manager. So we've never had any conversations on any of this. We've never been involved in anything. All the proposals that have been developed, all of the questions that have come forward, nobody's ever asked me. Nobody asked anybody on our executive committee. And this is what I do. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and like Councilwoman Foberg said, you've got a lot of people in the room that are very well vested in Aberdeen and have a lot of knowledge and expertise in this. And nobody ever asked us anything. So then when we got the original job description that was put together, we were asked to submit a proposal, but we didn't have any RFP to answer to, so I used the job description and did the best we could, and then shared that with the board, and they said, yeah, this looks good, go ahead and go forward with it. And then that was tabled, and we were told that it didn't meet the expectations or fulfill what you were looking for, but we don't know what you're looking for. And then we got the counter proposal back from the city manager or the council, however that was done, and then the very next day the article came out in the paper. And if you look at the counter proposal versus the content of what was in the paper, they don't match. So from the original job description to the counter proposal to the article that was in the paper, there's nothing matching. And as I sit here and listen to you guys tonight, I think what I'm hearing is you're not exactly sure what you're looking for. You don't know what the ultimate outcome is. If it's retail, we don't focus specifically on retail, but we wouldn't be opposed to it in some way, shape, or form. You just have to decide what that might look like. And that hasn't been defined. So when you talk about, I know there's been mention of a parallel track. If you're running on a parallel track, that to me means that you're doing the same thing. And everything that's in the job description is what we do, minus the retail and the housing, the TIF coordination concept that the city manager has mentioned. So I don't know how to answer a lot of the questions, because we don't know what we don't know.
Sure. Yes, Councilman
may.
Lena.
I do want to make it very clear that when I say the challenges from before that the city of Aberdeen faces, I don't say those because the city of Aberdeen faces those alone. Those are a huge state of South Dakota problem. We have great businesses opening. We have great businesses happening. We have great jobs available. We're just facing challenges that a lot of other communities are facing. But the one thing I do love is that the people that I talk to are very excited about all of the different opportunities, and every phone call I place or every real estate agent I talk to or any aspect of it is always excited about how can we fix the problems in order to achieve getting someone or something here. And that's great. But I will say to hear that you don't feel as though issues or thoughts were communicated. I feel like I've over communicated all of the different thoughts or processes that I've had. In fact, 2 years ago in December, it was November or December, my first call about economic development and my thought processes took place. And in regards to transparency and my questions on how it all worked. So I do feel like calls have been made, questions have been asked, concerns have been shared, to the point of I almost am worried that how is my communication not working correctly, because the amount that I've talked about these different things to the amount of different people that I've talked to about these things I feel like, and I feel as though I've seen several council members also sit in those meetings and have those conversations. I don't know how I, as a council member, could have been more clear. And I'm sorry if the executive board, who I've sat down with several of them, feels as though I wasn't. This process started not in the last month, not when even that was put on the agenda. This process started and has been ongoing on just trying to figure out how our economic development is shaping from just dealing with the water project that we're working on. So I respect and understand that not everybody has been in every single meeting or on every call, but I do genuinely believe that I personally, as a council member, could not have spent more time or effort on this project getting thoughts and opinions.
Thank you. Mike, would you like to, is there a hand?
Oh, I was just going to say the only calls that I received on this are from people generally over the age of 60 who have lived in Aberdeen for a long time, and they're concerned about the city doing the same thing the Aberdeen Development Corporation does, and that it would be ineffectual, and that it's just overreach of government, growth of government unnecessarily, that the Aberdeen Development Corporation functions well. And I think it's really important that we point out that communication's a two-way street, and if we feel like we're not being communicated with, if the city council feels that way historically from the Aberdeen Development Corporation, it's partly from the city council not being at the Aberdeen Development Corporation meetings as well. So when communication breaks down, it's both sides that break down the communication. And I'm with David. You don't know the consequences of a decision that you make until 5 years from now, and you might not know the magnitude of the consequences of a decision we make tonight for 10 or more years. And we might be stagnant at 26,000 people 10 years from now because of a decision that gets made in this room tonight. And so we need to think not just in the moment and not just about our own personal experiences, but about 70 years ago and 20 years from now, and what we want this town to be. And I want the city and the Aberdeen Development Corporation to be working together. And so what we need to do is move forward in a realm where we're working together.
Thank you. Any final comments from the council before we vote on the amendment, which was proposed by Councilwoman Foberg? All right, so to restate, it would be the idea of having an addition of $100,000 provided to the ADC in the 2023 budget. And did I capture that successfully? Yeah.
Correct. It's a friendly amendment, so it's an amendment to the motion that
And at
I
this
think
point,
Councilman Reif made.
Yeah.
Can you do a roll call vote?
We will.
Okay.
And so, just to be clear again, this is voting just on the amendment for the amount, and then we'll see where we go from there. Jordan, would you do a roll call on the amendment for the $100,000?
Councilmember Ronayne,
No.
Foberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
No.
Reif,
No.
Reinbold,
No.
Langer,
No.
Norvstrup, Deputy Mayor Johnson.
No. We return then to the original motion and second, which were to adopt option number 1. And that is, again, the original proposal from the city manager for the economic development manager hiring.
So I have a question.
Please.
So we don't think 100,000 is the right way to maintain that relationship. What is the number that maintains that relationship?
Mr. Deputy Mayor,
and
how
I
do
would
we?
propose it, but it doesn't matter what I say because I'm obviously in the minority. So I would like to hear from the other people that obviously thought the 100,000 was wrong. What is the right number?
I don't.
What does that look like?
Sorry, I don't want to talk over you. I think that.
Councilwoman Langer,
I think a lot of. I mean, obviously, Josh and Justin both voiced that they would be in favor of something, and I am as well. I don't know what that number looks like. I don't know if that's something that we not put a number and say as needed and as requested, and then we approve it. I mean, I don't know what that looks like because this is obviously something that hasn't been discussed. I don't feel comfortable saying. I don't feel comfortable with $100,000 either, but I do feel comfortable with doing something.
Councilman, sorry.
Let's go to Councilman Rife next.
Yeah, I would say if we just do a blanket number, it takes us back to the spot we already are in. And so I wouldn't be opposed to a number, whatever that number happens to be, but I'd want a lot of the things that are in this agreement associated with those funds. So I wouldn't be willing to set a number and say, yeah, let's just give you X amount of dollars per month, because then it puts us in the exact same spot and in many scenarios that we are now, faced with some of the same issues that we've had. So in my mind, we start with the vote of option one, then after that, we can address the other portion.
Councilwoman Forward.
Can we clarify whether that's even possible? Because if we make a motion on this, there's nothing else on the agenda regarding the ADC. Ron, correct?
That would be correct.
So we couldn't make another motion.
No, I mean, you're still considering this entire issue, so there could be a follow-up motion that's related to this.
There could be a follow-up motion. And to clarify, I think it's a little, and I'm going to use a strong word, and I'm sorry. Well, maybe I can't.
You can't.
I'm going to say it would be it's a professional relationship between the city and the Economic Development Corporation. So I think we should treat each other as professionals, and to ask them to submit bills is not treating them as professionals. If we're saying we value the work that they do and we don't want it to end, we should invest in that work that they do and trust that they use the money wisely. We spent $60,000 on softball fences. I think we can invest a good sum of money in our city.
Thank you for that comment. Okay.
Can I?
Sure.
I think having a definite number helps both sides move forward, because, like, are we going to pay $10,000 and stop, or are we going to pay $300,000? Like, there's obviously a limit to the money. Like, so if we're serious about maintaining the relationship, we have to put a number on it. And I'd be way more comfortable with having this as a joint decision, like keeping them together, than saying we'll decide that later. Because I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to come back to it later, or it's not going to pass if we do come back to it later. So I think we need to figure out a number so both sides have some understanding, and we can still do the November 18th criteria, I would think, but we need to have a roadmap, and because they could submit a bill and we could say, sorry, we were just kidding, and we pay $0, and we obviously can't pay $300,000. So we need to set some kind of number to maintain that relationship, I think, going forward. So I don't know what it is, but I would like to hear something.
And I think if whoever makes that motion can certainly say that the counter proposal 1118 is part of it. I don't know why they couldn't. These things don't have to be mutually exclusive.
If there were another amendment for some new amount, would that need to occur now, or could it occur after we vote on option one?
If you're going to amend it along the lines of the earlier amendment with some lesser number, now would be the time to do that.
Okay. Councilwoman Rife.
My concern here, Ron, is that in this, it talks of 130,000 from their counter proposal, if that's what we're going to use. It talks about some things that may not apply to a dollar amount. So I'm wondering if that would be appropriate to use this, or if we make an amendment somehow. And what would be the proper way to word that is what I'm asking.
I'm sorry, I would not know how to do that. Here's what little I can offer to try to clarify at this point is that with the current motion that's outstanding is to adopt item 1, which would be the city manager's proposed plan. If you seek to modify that in any way, or supplement it, we'll say, now would be the best time to make a motion to amend, similar to what Councilwoman Fulberg had done earlier. And then let that motion go through a vote to amend. Otherwise, you could simply go ahead and vote on the current motion, and then following that, again, consistent with the spirit of this agenda item, there could be follow-up motions to attempt to deal with the ADC.
Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Yes, Councilwoman Langer.
To clarify, when organizations that we give money to get paid, they submit for bills for reimbursement regardless, correct? Because that's then what we see.
No.
Okay. So that's a normal process.
I don't think so. Like when you give $100,000 to a stadium, they don't submit a bill to you, do they?
Yes, yeah, they do.
They submit a bill for $100,000 worth of nails or what?
They just say, it's basically
It's
a
an
statement.
invoice.
Yeah, an invoice, a statement for our pledge.
But
So
it
it'd be the
lists the
same.
different things that they spent that money on specifically. Like if you pulled the Development Corp's bills that they've submitted to the city for reimbursement for the last 6 months, you can see the different things that we're reimbursing them for the money that they're getting. Like if you ask Jordan,
The invoices they submit provide expenditures up to or exceeding the amount that is allocated monthly.
that's not a non-traditional practice, but I think, the aspect of trust, that is one of the areas in this that is contentious. And so to say that we should just trust organizations, I think that's why we're in part of this in the first place, is that we want to make sure that each organization that we're working with, we trust fully. And this document here is what's going to help us move forward feeling that way. So I don't think it's absurd or weird to ask that. I'm glad we do that.
Can I make a comment?
You may.
So there's been a number of things that have been brought forward tonight. People keep identifying issues that exist. Nobody's ever told us what the issues are. Councilwoman Langer just brought up that the billing information. When I first came to the ADC 9.5 years ago, at that time, Jordan wasn't in this position. And I made contact with the individual that filled Jordan's position. I said, what do we need to submit on a monthly basis? The response was, it doesn't matter. Just send us bills that total more or over. So every month, all we've ever done is just grab bills out of the pile that total over the amount. They're not the same every month, etc. So we were just simply following directions from the city. So if somebody has a question like that and you feel that we're not being transparent, the problem comes back to nobody ever said anything. When I make the budget and give it to the board, I clearly note on there that the dollars that come from the city are allocated toward paying salaries for the staff that are doing the work. I never submitted the budget to match up, or the invoice to the city to match up to that, because we were told it didn't matter. So as some of you have met with individual executive committee members or made phone calls, when you bring up things that are apparently issues, there's always an answer for it, and there's a reason why. So a lot of the issues that are being identified which nobody ever answered the one question. I think David asked it, or Aaron asked it, and it was in the form of a question. What are you looking for that you're not currently getting? We asked that question in July when we found out about that this discussion was going. Never one time has anybody answered that question. Not once. All of this could have been avoided if we would have just gotten a room and just lay it out. Tell us what you're not getting that you're currently looking for. And if there's questions about billings or other little things like that, be very easy to fix. Just need to have communicated to us that you'd like us to match with the budget with, you know, it changed, apparently.
Thank you again for your input. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's return to voting on option 1. Jordan, please.
Councilmember Norvstrup,
No.
Langer,
Yes.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Fauberg,
No.
Ronayne, Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Aye. All right, thank you. It appears that with Mayor Schoeneman abstaining, the voting is 6-2 in favor of adopting option 1.
Can we revisit the allocation to ADC, what we think that number is? Because we just talked about that we were gonna do that. So are we gonna do that?
Is there a proposal
Sure
for,
can.
for option 1118 with, number 3 changed to a different amount of money?
So
Well,
I'll entertain a motion. We've had, I think, adequate discussion, but I'll entertain a motion for an amendment, and it sounds like you're looking for a specific amount to propose.
If I can just be clear, this would not be an amendment, this would be a new motion.
Correct.
Thank you.
well, I guess I'll start the bidding process here if that's what we want to do here. I mean, if we're doing a 180, we do 50 to Northern, and this new position is going to cost 100, let's say, give or take. I think 30 is a good number.
Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
We have a motion made from Councilman Reif and a second from Councilwoman Langer for $30,000 as an additional supplemental amount to the ADC. Let's just go to a vote, shall we?
I'd like to just say one thing.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
please do.
I really want to work with the ADC. I really want to make something work to move this forward. But I am genuinely sitting up here pretty shocked that I'm hearing that anybody in this room, because I can point out at least 5 to 6 people, maybe 7 that I've spoken to individually and very clearly expressed the different things that I feel like personally, and that the council and I have talked to hours upon hours upon hours on this, 75 of my own personal hours on this topic, wanting to continue this partnership. So to say that nobody knows what's going on is really hard. I've spoken to each council member for hours upon hours. I care so much about this, clearly too much, because the amount of times that I've spoken didn't matter if I'm hearing that none of it was heard or received. So I'm going to support giving money. I'm going to support this relationship because I know how important it is to the city, and I know all of you matter very much, as well as everybody who pays money into the city. But I'm really unhappy to hear, and I want to make sure that the city understands when they're listening to this, that I feel like I have been very clear about what is wrong and what is right, in my personal opinion, on our relationship currently. And so I will support this $30,000, but I want to make that very clear.
Okay. Can
So-
we end commenting, or are there others?
I just wanted to comment that $30,000 is half of what the softball fence has got.
Thank you. All right. Is it clear then? I hope it is, what we're voting again on this new motion for $30,000 allocation to the Aberdeen Development Corp. for 2023. Jordan, please.
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Foberg. Oh, excuse me, Foberg, sorry.
I think I'm gonna, I'll vote aye, just to show support to the ADC.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Norvstrup.
No.
Deputy Mayor Johnson.
Aye. So we have passed that motion by a 7-1 vote.
Can I change my vote?
I think that's allowed.
I'm gonna vote no.
All right, so we have passed that motion with a 6-2 vote.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay. I just want to explain my no. I support the ADC, but obviously maybe it's not obvious, but I think you guys deserve more. And I saw the writing on the wall that 30,000 was unpassed, so I took the position of no because I think the ADC deserves more. So that's why I did what I did. Not that I support economic development and you guys, but I think you deserve more. So
Ditto.
Thank you. All right, so then we return to, I guess my head's maybe spinning still.
That concludes this business?
Yes. Let me say thank you to the 7 people who have been standing for the last hour in the gallery. Thank you for your patience, all of you, in the process. And we appreciate very much the thought and the input that was given here. We'll now return presiding officer duties to Mayor Schoeneman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You did a wonderful job, as always. Appreciate all of you in the crowd for joining us here tonight and all the lively input from the council on that topic. Move along to our new business segment, where we'll start with the 2021 audit presentation by Ide Bailey. And I'd like to thank Councilman Norvstrup for suggesting that we dig into this issue specifically. I think that was a great idea, and I'm glad that that we're able to look at that. Jordan, would you care to kick off this this item for us, please?
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we're joined by partner Cameron Zent from Ide Bailey. He'll provide a brief overview of our 2021 audit. It's a bit late. We've never done this before, but it's informational only, and I hope you enjoy. With that, I defer to Cameron Zent.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Yeah, a little bit late. We're already almost into December, and 30 days from now, it'll be a turn of a new fiscal year. But no better time than the present, I suppose, to go over fiscal year 21. Pleasure to be here, audit partner here in the Aberdeen office. I've worked on the city audit for many years as a staff, and now as partner for the last 2 or 3. I lose track of time, but I have a PowerPoint presentation with some high-level results from the audit and some brief financial information, and then we'll just open it up for general questions too. So our first section here that I'll go through is kind of the results of the fiscal year 21 audit. In terms of, so there's 2 components of the audit. There's the financial statement audit, and then there's the, you can call it a federal program audit, testing federal expenditures, commonly called a single audit, conducted under the uniform guidance. And so our financial statement part of the audit, we issued a clean, unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements, basically meaning that those financial statements we issued, based upon our audit procedures, we believe they're fairly stated in all material respects. prepared under United States GAAP for governments. The federal expenditure portion, we also issued a clean, unmodified opinion on the audit of the major federal program. Basically, that just more or less is the major program that we audited. The aspects and operations of that program complied in all material respects with compliance requirements produced by the feds in their OMB compliance supplement that could be considered direct and material to that program. That major program that we audited in fiscal year 21 was Airport Improvement Program. So all the activity going on at the airport, runway, taxiway. That is typically the largest federal program, albeit besides 2020 when the coronavirus relief fund was passed and the city expended those funds. Our findings from our fiscal year 21 audit broken down into two pieces. The first part is findings over the general financial statements. We issued two audit findings, one of which was auditor assistance in preparation of the financial statements and schedule of expenditures of federal awards. We as the auditor, we help prepare all the financial statement footnotes, statement of cash flows, various pieces of the financial statements that are required under US GAAP, in addition to the annual report that Jordan prepares for all of you in the council. The second financial statement finding we had was related to audit adjustments. And as part of our audit procedures identify certain financial statement misstatements that we correct as part of our audit procedures. And in order to issue a clean unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements. Relating to the uniform guidance or single audit, pleased to report we did not have any findings, either control or compliance findings, relating to our testing of the airport improvement program. We'll get into some high-level financial statement information. As you all, I'm sure, are aware, there's numerous funds within the city of Aberdeen. For the sake of time, we'll kind of look at things at quite a high level and kind of look at some of the major funds. So this first slide here is overall cash and investments. And I've combined cash and investments together as typically pretty much the investments the city holds are certificates of deposit. So not as liquid. I mean, cash is the most liquid asset, but very accessible. And so here you can see with 2021 on the far left compared to 3 prior years, just the general year-over-year change in total cash and investments, but also broken up between governmental funds and business type funds. Your business type funds, just for reference, are largely water and sewer fund. Those are the two main ones. Governmental funds, 2 largest are general fund, special sales tax, and a number of other smaller, either major or non-major funds. Total cash investments 2021 were just over 43 million at 43.2. A little bit of an increase over 2020. That was about 42.5 million. Composition between business type and governmental ebbs and flows based on year-to-year operations. Total cash and investments. This is government-wide in total governmental funds and business type. And you can see the year-over-year trend in composition between cash and what is investments. For 2021, almost $8.5 million of investments. 8.25 million of that was in certificates of deposit with varying maturities on those. Increase in cash from 2020. Some of that was as these CDs come due. Interest rates at that time were quite low on CDs. Wasn't really a whole lot different from holding on as just cash. So that's the largest as far as a change from investment to cash and composition. That was the main reason for that. So if we start getting into some general fund kind of information, general fund being the general operating fund of the city, this slide here depicts revenues within the general fund. And largely revenues within the general fund consist of your taxes, sales, property taxes. Also, there's next largest would be charges for various services the city provides, and also intergovernmental sources. Down below, you can see trend in property taxes and sales taxes has shown a general increase, which it has largely in most areas, a general increase in revenues, with 2020 being the slight outlier. 2020 within other intergovernmental revenue was just over 8.7 million. A lot of that is the coronavirus relief funds that were received in 2020 and taken as revenue in that fiscal year. So that kind of creates a little outlier in 2020 related to COVID. Otherwise, your charges general increase and in intergovernmental and taxes. The general fund expenditures side, this shows you the composition of the different kind of functions by functional category within our financial statements that we issue, where the general fund expends its dollars. You can see the largest area, the general fund expenditures relates to public safety. This is your police and fire primarily related expenditures. And then public works is the next largest area. This is your highways and streets and garbage, sanitation operations. General inflationary kind of increasing trend, one as the city grows, but two as costs over time increase. Okay, looks like I was missing a slide in there, so we'll skip to this one. Fund balances. Fund balance, this is equity in other terms. Basically, your assets minus liabilities is fund balance. Typically, kind of what you want to see here is a general increasing trend in fund balance. That's an indicator that the general fund is taking in more than it's spending. And so you can see that quite a big jump from 2019 to 2020. That's largely related to that coronavirus relief fund revenues. And also the fund balance, the different composition of fund balance. Your unassigned section there is what I'll just call it dollars or equity that's not tied or restricted, to keep it simple. Committed is the next largest chunk, just around $6 million. Back in 2020, related to those CRF dollars, the council at that time had passed commitments to use certain funds for certain purposes. In accordance with U.S. GAAP, that creates a fund balance commitment. Those committed dollars technically have to be used for those purposes for which they were committed for, unless the council were to approve a resolution to decommit the use of those funds for some other purpose or unrestricted or unassigned purposes. Any questions at all so far before I continue to keep moving?
Done a great job so far, Cameron. Keep moving along.
Okay. Special sales tax fund. This is the next largest fund of the city. Revenue side, this is sales taxes primarily, is the big item in here. It's a general increase in the sales taxes over the last 4 years. And then expenditures ebb and flow in the sales tax fund, special sales tax fund, depending on projects primarily. Those expenditures primarily funnel into the public works side, street projects commonly paid underneath that line item. And here, total fund balances, similar to general fund. This is that equity position. Fund balance in the special sales tax fund really ebbs and flows as far as special sales tax fund also commonly has some pretty significant interfund transfers out to other funds of the city to help support operations. And so depending on what those transfers are, what those major projects are, fund balance can increase or decrease year over year. Last couple slides, proprietary funds. Your two largest proprietary funds here, water fund and sewer fund. This right here with the most recent year, 2021 on the left. So you maybe read it right to left. But the top line is your operating revenues. Middle line there in the purple color is operating expenses. The bottom line in blue is operating income. The key item to look at here is one, positive operating income. As these proprietary funds are supposed to be self-sustaining, user charges, maintaining or keeping up with operating expenses. So operating income seeing a either steady or increasing result in operating income. As you can see, water fund overall operating income in the last few years in excess of 1 million and showing a general increasing trend.
Cameron?
Yes.
Here. Can you back up one more slide? I meant to ask a question and then you move quickly to this water fund. So the preceding slide?
Yep. This one.
So can I ask a question of Jordan? Jordan, I know it's only a 4-year window, so it's hard to really extrapolate what the trend is, but you can clearly see that we were increasing from 18 to 20, and then we have a nearly 30% decrease for 21. Is that a concern?
No. As you can recall, we paid off some bonds in 2021, and that relates largely to the reduction there.
Okay.
And as Cameron mentioned, projects will save cash within that fund and then expend it when the project expenses are incurred.
Okay. It's only decline I see there, so that was an important question. Thanks.
Yeah, just to shed more light on that, in 2021, the special sales tax fund transferred out almost $8.6 million of resources, basically. So if you kind of visualize it, from 20 to 21, you'll have net income, more revenue than expenses within that fund. So then there's excess, as Jordan mentioned, a lot of debt paid down, a lot of those financial resources to do so transferred from special sales tax to various other funds of the government, pay down that debt, in addition to regular budgeted projects and so forth.
Okay.
So going back to water fund, positive, in general increase in net income and revenue growth there. Sewer fund, very much the same. Same concept. Sewer fund revenues, general increase, correlating with increases of expenses, consistent, steady to general growth in operating income for continued operations and sustaining of that fund operations. Any general questions at all on the audit process, financial results, anything that I can help further explain or elaborate? That is my last slide, yes.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
On page 103, it talks about the internal control over compliance and that there was no such opinion expressed, but then later on there's some findings about the city does not have an internal control system adequately designed to provide for the complete and accurate preparation of financial statements, and I was wondering if you can expound on that.
Yes, so as part of the audit process is opinion on the financial statements. We are not doing an internal control audit specifically, where we give an opinion on internal controls. What we do or are required to do is based on, in the audit, we do a baseline level of looking at the internal control environment and the structure. And if we identify deficiencies considered to be either significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, we are required to report those to governance as they are deemed to have impact on the financial statements and part of the risk assessment within the financial statement process. So since we're not doing an internal control audit, we don't give an opinion per se on the operating effectiveness of internal controls, but we do report if we identify any deficiencies that we deem are significant to warrant the attention of governance.
And did you find deficiencies?
They're explained within, it's connected with our audit adjustments related finding. By default, when within an audit, if you identify audit adjustments, by default, that means that an internal control either was not designed or operating effectively to identify that prior to the audit process. And so as a result of the audit process, when we identify, there's different magnitudes of misstatements. The ones that are deemed material must be corrected in order for us to issue a clean, unmodified audit opinion. So within the audit process, yes, within the cause section, within page 107 of the financial statements is where it kind of describes the cause of the internal control finding. Various factors come into play as far as failures or not identifying certain needed audit adjustments that we correct as part of the audit.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a follow-up question?
Please do.
So it says that the finding has not been resolved, and the reason for the finding's reoccurrence is that the city staffing model does not allow for a cost-effective solution. We have an $84 million budget. Like, what is the solution so that we don't have, so that we have better internal controls?
It's general review. I would say it starts with separation and review of having someone prepare of financial information adjustments, separated from who's reviewing that for reasonableness, accuracy, corroborated with support. That's a component of it. In addition, just more attention to source documentation. There's a number of different things that play into it, without getting really into the weeds, unless that's something that the council wants. But there's a lot of transactions going on, and it's difficult by nature for one individual to largely handle that process. Not necessarily segregation of duties, but more review and monitoring of the financial manual adjustment process, reconciliation process of various balance sheet accounts would help identify some of those. Now, you could have controls that are designed perfectly, and we're all human, and so there's those controls could just fail to operate effectively. And but design is really key, and that could be improved.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council for our auditor?
Yes.
Councilman Northrup?
So this isn't part of, or maybe it is, but there's like 100 pages to get into it. But on September 26th, when we approved the audit findings, on page 2, there were significant risks identified. With the first one, there were 6 of them, and the first one was, just for example, is management override of controls. And I was just wondering what that means and if we should be concerned or not. And there's 5 other ones, but that's the first one on the list, which I'm not going to go one by one, but just kind of understand why those are there.
So, very good question. What you're referring to is what's referred to as our governance communication. Basically summarizes the audit results. This section here, significant risks identified, is a recent auditing standard change, where the result of this standard, for us, from the audit perspective, requires us for the first time to list and convey, but to list these and show our significant risks identified as part of the audit process within this communication. Fiscal year 21 is the first year that was a requirement. This section, the purpose of this is to identify, as part of our risk assessment process before we start the audit process, we assess the areas of the financial statements that, based on their nature, whether they are complex, involve significant estimate, whether they are unusual type of transactions, we identify as part of the audit process where in the financial statements is there more likely to be errors, essentially. And those areas are deemed to have significant risk. And management override of controls specifically is, from an audit perspective, a pervasive audit-related risk for every single audit engagement. The city is not different than any other entity that undergoes an audit. The premise is that management within the organization would have the ability, whether it's through collusion or just controls could be designed, but management would have the ability to circumvent those controls for whatever purpose that may be. So it's something to be mindful of, but like I said, the city's not immune to it. It's not unique to the city at all. The other ones below it, revenue recognition, not to spend a ton of time on here, but revenue recognition is, for virtually all audits, a similar pervasive risk. Any entity, revenue is the lifeblood of it. Inherently, there's a inherent potential for misrepresenting that for various reasons. So that's considered by nature typically a pervasive risk. The other ones are city-specific in certain areas of the financial statements that we, from audit past experience or just based on the nature of the transaction, transaction class, etc., we think that there's higher level risk where we devote more audit procedures and time and attention and experience and expertise to those areas.
You had suggested that review by another party might be a good tactic to employ. Are there other opportunities for improvement that maybe aren't quite so blaring as some of these big picture items that you had mentioned, but opportunities for us to improve our systems?
From an audit perspective, which is really the only perspective I can speak to, from an audit perspective, we're concerned about obviously financial information, financial data, integrity of it. Really, the just review of the transactions, reconciliation controls. That's the major one. From a segregation of duties perspective, we don't have any identified issues with that. But it's really just focusing on a financial statement reporting perspective, just ensuring that all transactions that need to be recorded in the fiscal year are, which we commonly refer to as completeness. But then also that account balances are all tied out and properly adjusted, whether that's agreeing to listings, supporting documentation. It's a long list of things, but that come into play. But that would be where I would focus.
Thank you, Cameron. Anything else from the council? Really appreciate your time here tonight. It was very informative, and I think we all got a lot out of it. Cleaned it up a little bit more than just numbers on a paper, I think. Thanks for the charts.
Thank you.
We'll move along to our possible first reading of an ordinance titled 22-1102, which provides for the fixing of wages of city officials and employees for the year 2023. Joe, you're still here.
Yes, I am. Thank you. This is something that's required by state code each year to publish the wages for all employees in the upcoming year. Just a real fast recap, in the budget we included a basic 2.5% for general employees. With the exception, there were 24 positions that equated to about 40 people that received a regrade. So those are about 5%. And then what's within the negotiated agreements with the police and fire unions.
I'd entertain a motion if someone was so inclined.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Reif and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Does anyone in the council have any questions for City Manager Joe about any of these particular items? Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Ronayne. Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Boberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. And that guy's questions slide, was that a crumpled up piece of paper? Was his light bulb? That really bothered me. I was like, I don't know what that's implying here, but questions are trash, folks.
Should have asked him while we had the chance.
Who needed that laugh?
I didn't look that closely.
We'll skip ahead past item C, which we'd eliminated, to item D, which is the public hearing on a petition for a voluntary annexation from Yope Bolin and a possible approval or denial of a resolution titled 22-1102R, which annexes 13 acres of property located north of Willow Drive in the Wiley Park Estates addition to the city limits of Aberdeen at 1414 and 1415 Maple Drive, as well as 1416 Poplar Drive and 1416 Willow Drive. Brett, what have you got for us on that item?
Well, this property is adjacent to city limits on 3 sides. The owner is looking at building a home on the lot, on a portion of the lot, and they're requesting to annex in order to get city services, water and sewer. And water and sewer are adjacent to the property in Willow Drive right away. Staff recommends approval of this annexation request.
Move approval.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilman Johnson and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Brett, so on the map that they have included, or that you have included into this item, when we're looking at the color-coded section, what exactly are we looking at for this?
The crosshatch area is what they're requesting to annex, the green crosshatch.
And that's going to be for a single home?
Yes.
Good old Yope. He's really making moves over there. Any questions from the council?
Will the street names still stay there, Poplar and Maplewood, or how does that work?
No, they'll probably eventually replat that into 2 lots, 1 lot for the home, then another lot for the rest of the remainder of the property.
Because there's already a Maplewood, so it's a little confusing if I were a postman.
Good thing you're not.
Jordan, would you give us a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Boberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Thanks for a little levity in this situation, Brett. We appreciate it. Next, we've got a public hearing and possible approval of a transfer of a retail on-off sale malt beverage in South Dakota Farm wine license for Hub City Axe Throwing, which does business as Hub City Axe Throwing. That's pretty redundant there. From 3315 6th Avenue Southeast, Suite 10 to 210 South Main Street. And I would entertain a motion if someone is...
I motion that we accept this.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Liebelt and a second from Councilman Reif. Anyone here looks like are pretty well cleared out. No one here to speak. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry. Next, we've got the possible approval of a combined election agreement between the City of Aberdeen, Brown County, and the City School District 6-1 Jordan. What can you tell us about that?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a similar proposal to what we approved in 2013. The school district's already considered and approved it. There's a slight modification to some of the rates because it was last set in 2013. The increases are $250 per item, very minimal. Staff recommends approval.
Entertain a motion if someone was so inclined.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Foberg and a second from Councilman Reif. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry. Next, we've got the possible approval of the appointment of Melissa Erlenbush to the Business Improvement District 2 Board.
Move to approve.
Second.
I've got a motion from Councilwoman Langer and a second from Councilman Reinbold. Any statement from anyone on the council on this one or questions? Pretty straightforward. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion does carry. Next, we've got the request to purchase a Homatro extrication equipment in the amount of $44,908.56 for the fire department from McQueen Emergency, and the approval of that payment for the equipment. Chief Weig is here to tell us about that. Welcome, Chief. What have you got?
Yeah, good evening. The department would like to purchase the multiple extrication equipment for a total of $44,908.56 from the McQueen Emergency Group. This equipment is going to replace an old set of extrication equipment that we have that is 20 plus years old, and it'll be placed on our new rescue pumper that is being spec'd and built that will hopefully be here in May or June. The equipment is budgeted for in 2023. However, if we wait till 2023 to purchase it, the price will go up an additional $13,506.69, making the total price of $58,365. So in order to save us some money in the budget for 2023, I'm requesting that we purchase it in 2022.
Move to approve.
Second
that.
Got a motion from Councilwoman Langer, a second from Councilwoman Liebelt. Any issues with the budgeting aspect on that, Jordan?
Nope, I worked with him on this.
Sounds great. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the council? Jordan, would you give us a roll call on this one, please?
Councilmember Ronayne.
Aye.
Foberg.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Nordstrup.
Aye.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Thank you for joining us, Joel.
Thank
Appreciate it. Always good to see you. Next, we've got the possible approval of payments for the airport improvement projects and to authorize the city manager to sign those pay requests. We've got payment 36, taxiway geometry, Helms for 5203. We've got payment 10, the GA apron reconstruction to Helms 2047, and payment number 2, rehab and lighting to Helms for $9,983.91. Rich, what can you tell us about those payment requests?
Yeah, thank you. So payment number 36 on EIP 43 is for construction, observation, and administrative services, and that was off that 100% FAA fully funded grant. Payment number 10 for AIP 47, again for administration and construction observation, and that grant is a 95, 2.5 split on that. And then payment number 2 on AIP 48 is for design services for runway 1331 project that we're going to kick off next year, and that one also is at 95 and 2.5 and 2.5 split.
Move to approve all three payments.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Johnson, second from Councilwoman Langer. Does anyone have any questions for Transportation Director Rich Krokel? Jordan?
Councilmember Nordstrup.
Aye.
Langer.
Aye.
Reinbold.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reif.
Aye.
Liebelt.
Aye.
Foberg.
Aye.
Ronayne.
He's in Jamaica.
He's
Tough
absent.
life.
Mayor Shoneman.
Aye, motion does
He gave
carry.
up on it.
Nothing
He
but
gave up on us.
He's like, and no. It's 5 o'clock here.
Next and last on our new business agenda, we've got the possible approval of a change order number 1, which amounts to a negative $19,331.33, and a payment in the amount of $54,232.22 for the CWF Masonry and Construction for our street maintenance concrete repair project. Robin, good to have you back.
Thank you. This is a project that we do every year. We are actually, this was for work that we will be doing next year for our street patching and seal coating project. We try to get ahead of next year's work so we're not holding up our street department as they're going through the process. So this is actually pre-work for next year actually. So the $19,000 reduction change order is actually below the amount that we bid for the project. We're within budget, and this is a final payment, so we are not holding any retainage anymore. So this $54,000 plus will be a final payment for them for the year.
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Reinbold and a second from Councilwoman Langer. Any questions from the council? Jordan?
Councilmember Ronayne,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Norvstrup,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Aye, motion does carry. Next, we've got a review and approval of claims and payrolls, bills for the week of November 21st, payroll for the period of November 6th and through the 19th, as well as all the associated expenses incurred with hiring people. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
Move to approve.
All right, I've got a motion from Councilman Johnston, second from Councilman Ronayne. Jordan, would you give us our final roll call vote of the evening, please?
Councilmember Norvstrup,
Aye.
Langer,
Aye.
Reinbold,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reif,
Aye.
Liebelt,
Aye.
Foberg,
Aye.
Ronayne,
Aye.
Mayor Shonneman.
Yes, with the extension, I will abstain from House of Glass payment. Otherwise, aye. Motion does carry. We'll move along to our city manager's report. Joe, what have you got for us here tonight?
Couple things. One, just a reminder, because the year has flown by, Thanksgiving is this week, so city offices will be closed Thursday and Friday to allow our employees time with their families. And then a couple other fun little employee things. We do have the November employment milestones. We had two. With 5 years was Trent Amon in traffic control, and 15 years is John Quinn in the fire and rescue department. And then one other final news, employee-related news today, the Aberdeen Exchange Club presented their Officer of the Year award for the police department to Ann Wegg. She's actually in the records department, but also serves as a reserve officer, so she covers both sides of the bases over there. So congratulations to her and to our employees who reach those milestones, and that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thanks to Trent and John, and congratulations to Ann. Little known fact, or maybe not little known, Trent is probably the most musical employee that the city's got. Constantly touring with the little band. Does a great job, that kid. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion from Councilman Langer, second from Councilman Reif. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Aye.
Motion does carry. We are adjourned. Thank you all very